In the heart of the 13th century, the seas were a realm of chaos. A merchant sailing from Novgorod to London was a gambler, staking his life and fortune against pirates, treacherous storms, and the whims of petty lords. Each coastline demanded a toll, each river mouth a tax. Trust was a currency scarcer than gold, and a handshake was only as good as the sword arm that backed it. For a trader named Heinrich, leaving the port of Lübeck was an act of faith. His ship, laden with Baltic amber and fine northern furs, was a tiny, fragile world on an unforgiving ocean. The profits were immense, but the risks were absolute. This was the brutal reality of commerce in a fractured Europe, a world crying out for order. Out of this chaos, a radical idea began to take root. It wasn't born in a king's court or a philosopher's study, but in the smoky backrooms of merchant guilds in cities like Lübeck, Hamburg, and Bremen. What if, they whispered, they didn't have to face the dangers alone? What if they pooled their resources, not just for a single voyage, but for all of them? What if they created a Hans, an old German word for a convoy or guild? This wasn't a nation, forged by blood and soil. This was something new, a confederation bound by contract and coin. The Hanseatic League was born not of conquest, but of necessity. Their founding principle was simple, yet revolutionary. What harms one merchant, harms all. An attack on a Lübeck ship would be answered by the combined might of Hamburg's fleet. A new, exorbitant toll levied by an English duke would be met with a unified, crippling embargo from the entire League. Slowly, methodically, they built their empire of trade. They established permanent trading posts, called Kontors, in foreign cities from London to Bruges, Bergen to Novgorod. These Kontors were more than just warehouses. They were sovereign enclaves, miniature German cities operating under their own laws on foreign soil. Inside their walls, Hanseatic merchants lived, worked, and enforced their own rules, immune to local jurisdiction. A merchant from Cologne could do business in the London Steelyard with the same legal protections he enjoyed at home. This network created a seamless corridor of commerce, a standardized system where weights, measures, and, most importantly, contracts were honored. They weren't just moving goods, they were exporting trust. They financed the construction of lighthouses to guide their ships, trained pilots to navigate treacherous waters, and even funded militias to hunt down pirate nests. For the first time, a merchant like Heinrich could calculate his risk, secure financing based on predictable outcomes, and build a dynastic fortune not on luck, but on a system. The League's power became immense, rivaling that of kingdoms. They were a state without a state, a government run by a board of directors. When King Valdemar of Denmark sacked their key city of Visby in 1361, the League didn't send a diplomat, they declared war. A coalition of Hanseatic cities raised a fleet, defeated the Danish navy, and dictated the terms of peace at the Treaty of Stralsund. They forced the Danish monarchy to grant them 15% of the profits from Danish trade and a say in the Danish royal succession. Imagine a corporation today defeating a G7 nation in open war and then taking a seat on its board. That was the power the Hanseatic League wielded. They controlled the flow of grain from the east, fish from the north, salt from the south, and cloth from the west. They could feed a nation or starve it into submission. They held monopolies so tight that the economies of England, Scandinavia, and Russia hinged on their goodwill. Their flagship, the Kogge, a broad-beamed, single-masted vessel, became the symbol of their dominance, a floating fortress of commerce that projected economic power wherever it dropped anchor. But this golden age of the merchant princes could not last forever. The world was changing, and the very forces the League had helped unleash began to work against it. The age of discovery dawned, and new trade routes to the Americas and the Indies, controlled by emerging nation-states like Spain and Portugal, bypassed the old Hanseatic networks. Suddenly, Baltic herring seemed less vital when the oceans were teeming with new resources. Kings and queens, once beholden to the League's financial might, now had empires of their own. They consolidated power, built their own navies, and began to resent the privileged German merchants operating within their borders. Queen Elizabeth I of England, in a bold move to favour her own merchant adventurers, seized the Hanseatic contour in London, the Steelyard. effectively ending their centuries-long dominance in English trade. The League, a loose confederation of cities, found it difficult to mount a unified response against a centralized, patriotic kingdom. Internally, the League began to fray. The spirit of collective security gave way to individual ambition. As cities like Hamburg and Bremen grew wealthy, their interests diverged from smaller members. Why should a powerful Hamburg merchant risk his profits to defend a minor town in Livonia? The unity that had been their greatest strength became their fatal weakness. They were slow to adapt. While the Dutch were innovating with the joint stock company and the stock exchange, the Hanseatic League clung to its old family firm model. They were outmaneuvered, outfinanced, and outcompeted. Their final formal meeting was held in 1669. Only 3 cities, Lübeck, Hamburg, and Bremen, showed up to dissolve what was once the most powerful economic force in Europe. It was a quiet, anticlimactic end to a commercial empire that had once brought kings to their knees. The great Koga ships rotted in their harbors. The grand Kontors were repurposed or fell into ruin, and the very name of the Hanseatic League faded from memory, becoming a footnote in the grand narrative of nations. Yet, the ghost of the Hanseatic League is all around us. Their story is a powerful, cautionary tale. They created the first great common market, a precursor to the European Union, demonstrating that economic integration could foster unprecedented peace and prosperity. They proved that a rules-based order, backed by collective enforcement, was more powerful than the sword. But they also showed us the limits of such a union. Their fall reminds us that no system is permanent, and that success breeds the very competition that can lead to downfall. When we look at modern trade blocs, at multinational corporations that wield more power than governments, at the delicate balance between global cooperation and national interest, we are seeing echoes of the Hanseatic dilemma. They were the architects of a modern economic world, but they became its first great casualty. Their epic rise and fall serves as a timeless lesson. The forces of trade can build empires, but they can also tear them down, and the future always belongs to those who adapt. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story of power, trade, and history compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the forces that shaped our world. We'll see you next time.